This is a podcast from InRetroSpectPodcast.com. This is Freeplay. Hello, gentle listener, and welcome to Freeplay. This is episode 41, and in this episode, we'll be exploring the darker side of video games. To celebrate the annual festival of Halloween, we will be exploring some more scarier games. I am Daniel Frost, and I am joined by two fellow podcasters. In one, Mr. Peter Willington.
Hello.
2, Mr. Chris Darby.
You're right.
So join us on our quest into the darker, the scarier world of video games. Now, if I continue to talk like this for the whole show, it will last 6 hours. So I'm going to draw that to a close right there and say
weird.
hello. Welcome to Freeplay. We haven't been around for a while, so we're back with a bang. We've been off doing some shenanigans with some mischievous canines, but we have returned for a extra special Halloween scary show. How are you doing, guys? Welcome back.
Hello.
Hello there. Hello, Daniel.
Dan, that voice turned me on a little bit.
I'm both concerned and a little bit glad.
It was very it's really close to the mic there. It was very it was all filling up in my ears, and that is quite scary in itself.
Well, that's what I was going for. You see, I wanted to set the tone for the show, and I think the tone was indeed set.
Yeah, I think it was. It's sexy and scary. Is that's what we're going for, isn't it?
Exactly.
So it's a tightrope to walk between them.
Yeah.
There is quite the tightrope. How are you guys doing? We haven't done this for a while. Is it going to take some getting used to ease back into it, or are we ready to go flying at it?
Well, we've been busy naughty dogging, haven't we, really, for the last month or so?
We have indeed.
It's quite nice to be back into the fire of it, really. But I think an important thing to mention is that since we've been gone, we've had a birthday in the group. Our dear friend, Mr. Willington, 28 years old.
Yeah.
I just want to see if you had a good birthday, Pete, and what did you get for your birthday?
Yeah, it was all right.
What do you mean it was all right?
It was okay. No, I got all sorts of amazing gifts from lovely people.
Do tell.
Well, Dan, let me tell you a story. I get a little text from my friend Chris here. My good friend Chris. That's Chris. There he is. And he says, "Oh, I just popped a little something into the post for you because it's like a belated birthday wish." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, thanks very much." Like, very exciting. Always,
Very grateful, yeah.
And as you know, the listener will know if they've been a regular one for a while. We get each other lovely presents every birthday.
We do, yeah, and Christmas,
of course. And so I get a box through, and it's quite clearly from Chris, because it's the last gift.
It says from Chris.
Yeah, and I open it up, and I see the telltale blue plastic, like vulcanized rubber almost, I suppose, of a hot water bottle. And I thought,
because it's quite cold, isn't it, winter where you are?
Yeah, it gets a little bit nippy in my flat here in Bristol, and so my good friends bought me a hot water bottle, and brilliantly, it's a hot water bottle that has a cover. It comes with a cover. Wow, I thought.
Well, you need a cover sometimes because the bottle itself can get quite hot.
Get very hot.
You're totally right there, Dan. You're totally right.
It's a hot water bottle.
Exactly.
And the cover was a full portrait-sized face, a portrait-sized picture, I should say, of Chris's face, grinning away at me.
That sounds delightful.
So now
it's lovely.
I can. It's looking at me right now. I can take Chris's face to bed and curl up with him.
There you go.
Now my partner's not too happy about it. She's
understandably.
Yeah, understandably, because when it's when in the middle of the night I move it, I move it subconsciously in my sleep, and I put it between us. and she rolls over to see Chris's face smiling away.
Well, am I right in thinking that she's never met Kris, has she?
No,
she hasn't met Kris yet.
So this is her introduction to Kris is rolling over in bed and faced with his big old smiley face.
And it's like you remember GoldenEye had DK mode. You remember where you had like large heads.
Yeah,
it's basically like that. Like if Kris held it in front of his head, it would. It would engulf his head. It's huge, really. So yeah, it's quite a disturbing but thoughtful gift.
See, me and Sam were a little annoyed at this because we'd put thought into our gifts to you and we thought they were pretty good. And then Kris comes along and just blows us out of the water with a water bottle face cover.
Well, I was really pleased with the thermal underwear that I got.
Who got you that?
That was Sam, I believe, wasn't it?
Sam, who sadly can't be here this evening.
Yeah, Sam. Oh, sorry, yes, of
Too
course.
scared.
And what was it that you purchased for me, Dad?
I got you for listeners of the show. Maybe old listeners may know this. What did I get you, Pete?
Yeah, you got me sorbets and ices, the complete guide of how to make
exactly them. Because you've stated in the past your desire to make sorbet, and yet you've never accomplished it. So I thought I'd give you a nudge in the right direction.
We really are horrible.
We're not. I think it's a form of platonic love. I think personally, I just picture you, Pete, in your thermal underwear. Eating sorbet, clutching my face to your chest.
The sorbet slowly melting as a result of the hot water bottle.
Exactly. I think we're very good to each other. Actually, that you got to remember, Pete. No one else has got a hot water bottle with my face on it.
That is very true. That is very, very true. I don't. I certainly don't.
No.
I feel blessed.
I was going to fork out £10 and actually have the back of it with the back of my head on it. But I thought that'd be
Guys, we've played 2 games this month. Yes or no? Have you been scared?
Yeah.
That was a strained yes. That was a yes with feeling. I feel. I think there's a history there that we will come to. Kris, have you been scared by any of our games this month?
I've been unnerved by our games. I've been unnerved. I think that's the best way to answer. Really, I haven't really been uber scared, but I've been unnerved and I felt the tension.
Okay,
hold on a second. What's the difference? What's the difference between being scared and being sort of unnerved and tense? Like,
well, I associate being scared with kind of like, in this context, with like a visceral, strong reaction to, whereas unnerved is something's just really kind of creeping up and you're feeling very uncomfortable, and it's just slowly creeping up on you.
Is it? Just so we're clear, did you feel fear? Is the unnerving stemming from fear?
It is. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, definitely. It's fear. I felt fear, not like a huge kind of fear, but I felt it. These games had something.
Okay, I think the game that I want to start off with, I think is the best one to start off with, is Slender. Slender's a very, very popular game, came out a few years ago, and he's based around the mythology of the Slender Man, which I believe kind of came out of internet forums and kind of ideas, and it's really kind of escalated. It came out of nowhere, and suddenly it's this kind of iconic image of the Slender Man, the man with the white face in the dark suit. And this game came out a number of years ago, and many people were very scared by it. I have to say right now, I really dislike scary games. I don't like in any form of media being scared. It's not a feeling I enjoy. It's a feeling that I always actively avoid. If I'm watching a scary film, it's not been unknown for me to go online whilst I'm watching it to read the synopsis ahead of time so I know what's coming. It's a way of allowing me to be prepared for it. So when we started playing this game, right from the start, I was very aware, for both this and for eyes, that I was going to be scared, that I didn't want to be scared. And I tell you what, Slender, you've only gone and blooming scared the living bejesus out of me.
But that's because Okay, so did you ever play the Resident Evil games?
I did. I played Resident Evil 2 and then some of the later ones.
Okay. That's actually that actually works really well for me, because in 1 and 2 and maybe a bit of 3, a lot of it is sort of jump scares. Like it's classic video game horror in so much as it's the dog. The famous scene is the dog jumping through the window.
Yeah.
And in Resident Evil 4 and from there on, they become much more action games that are kind of gory, and they're not very scary, I would say. But the earlier ones, they definitely try to be, not creepy, but they try to scare you in the same way that a scary house, what are they called, like a fun house kind of a thing at a fair ride.
Pat Sharp.
Yeah, that's right. Haunted
twins.
House, that's the one. Yeah, Pat Sharp's Haunted House, and it's so they would try to do that, and then games kind of moved on, didn't they? We had that, and then we had the Silent Hill series, and those games were just pervading, creepy,
fantastic games.
Fantastic games. Yeah, they would unsettle you, and you would go to bed thinking about some of the things that they were doing, because they were intelligent. They weren't just kind of schlocky B movies, and that's really, I feel, apart from maybe going on to doing like gore horror, which is more kind of Dead Space. That's the kind of like Dead Space thing, and that kind of emanates out of like the action horror of the original Resident Evil. I think that's really the only two kinds of horror genre that really get done in games, and Slender is the Silent Hill, Project Zero, Clock Tower kind of pervading fear, or at least I felt it was anyway. I didn't feel like there were jump scares like left, right, and centre all of the time.
I agree. I don't think at no point did I feel as if the Slender Man was going to jump out at me. But it was a completely different type of fear, that I would come around a corner, and the sense of fear of me thinking, am I going to see him in the distance was there. That was the fear. I didn't think he was going to jump out at me, because that wasn't what the game was telling me, and it didn't seem like a game that was going to cheat me in that way. It wasn't going to trick me into thinking it was going to be one thing. I knew exactly what was happening, but it was still very, very scary.
So the premise behind Slender, listener, is that it's a first-person game. You're in a forest, and all you've got is a torch, and you've got to wander around this forest looking for letters. And there's 8 letters. Some of them will be like attached to trees, others big rocks. There's no map. You've got to really find yourself around there. Invariably, you end up getting lost because all trees look the same. You're just basically lost in this forest, and everything's lit by your single torch. So, of course, obviously you see stuff in the shadows without realising.
It's like first person. The audio is. Can we talk about the audio? Because
audio is the key. These sort of games live and die on their audio, to be honest.
Yeah,
and I think that's something that we will discuss, actually, comparing these two games as well, because they do have very different types of audio, and they do use audio in very different ways.
The thing that really got me with Slender is it is the constant sense of oppressive atmosphere. So did you ever go through the tunnel?
Yeah.
Like, not knowing what was on the left and what was to the left and to the right of me, what was outside. Like, I just wanted to stay in there. Like, and of course that is not a good idea. But
you don't want to stand still in this game.
No, absolutely you don't want to stand still. But it works so well because it constantly plays on all of your fears. The fears are not knowing what's out there. It does do the kind of odd audio static, the orchestral kind of
that made me jump. That was the thing that made me jump.
Yeah, and it does do jump scares every so often, but I feel like it did them to kind of put
check
me
you're still alive, basically.
but also to kind of put me off. Like I couldn't. I was constantly thinking, oh, something's going to come through my ears, and then as soon as something came through my ears, I didn't see the Slender Man I didn't see the Slender Man immediately, because I was kind of concentrating all of my energy on listening rather than looking. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but like all of my attention was in audio, and then suddenly it was right in front of me, and I was like, oh goodness me,
yeah. Yeah, I get that, because essentially to navigate, it's just using the mouse and the keyboard. So you can basically just keep walking forwards, and eventually you'll find a way through. I think what's I'm right in saying that basically what happens is, at instances, your screen, as you said, Pete, becomes very staticky, and that's to suggest that actually the Slender Man is nearby. Am I right in saying that? I only worked it out at the end.
So yeah, it's
too late.
Yeah, it does that, and also it gets you hear the big bassy drum.
I thought that was each letter you got, the more the stakes got raised.
Now it's because there's how many? It's 8 pages.
Eight pages. Yeah.
It's a game mechanic actually. The more pages you pick up, the more relentless he becomes.
Yeah,
so
that's understandable.
So it is the more pages you pick up, but it's because the Slender Man is behind, but basically getting closer all of the time.
I in kind of research, because obviously I didn't get that far, too scared to get that far. I always kept getting caught. But apparently, when you get to the 6th or 7th page, basically to avoid dying, you need to just sprint, and you can't look behind you because he's there, and that's the point. That the further you get, he becomes more frantic, and he's less kind of subdued and slow. And for me, it was that slow motion. I just wanted to raise one thing that very kindly for this show, Pete has put his sanity on the line and recorded 2 videos for us of playing Slender, which you need to listen to the end, because it's just a great moment in all of media. And then Eyes as well. Pete's done another video for us on that, so you can actually listen. And Pete, you talk a lot in your video about the sound, and I think at one point you even take your headphones out because you can't bear to listen to it anymore. And I think that's the word you used was oppressive, and that's exactly how I felt. You just felt as if the world was closing in on you, and it's the silence that's just deafening. All you hear is the crunch, crunch, crunch beneath your feet, and maybe a bird twittering or something like that, and you're so aware of there being nothing there. But in being aware that there's nothing there, you know there's this man out there who's after you. Because you never see him, you never see him move, you never do anything. For me, it's a feeling of the unknown that has the big, big impact on this. In my mind, I'm imagining how he's moving through the woods. He's moving like some kind of creature crawling on the ground, and he's horrible. He's just this, and because he's so slow, he's the idea of just an unstoppable force that you can't get away from. You just need to somehow survive for as long as you can. I mean, those were the big things that kind of struck me with it. Was that the same feeling as you had? I mean, what kind of images were you creating of him, kind of that weren't being shown to you?
I think it's interesting for me because I had no knowledge of the Slender Man mythos at all. So if listener, you have no idea about it, don't go into Google and search him. Play the game first, then find out about his kind of heritage, I suppose, for want of a better word, because I had no idea what or who the Slender Man was at all until I saw him, and that was the bit that made me jump. I turned and I saw him, and that was it. Game over. So I had all I had was this sense of pervading threat around me that was ramped up again by the music, that this was building towards something, and it was either a climax that I had to get to before my predator, the person chasing me, pursuing me, or he'd get there first. And that was entirely imaginative. I had nothing to pin that on other than the music and the mise-en-scène of the game, really, which is very impressive. I think it creeped me out, and like Pete, I had to lower the volume on my headphones.
I think the way the sound kind of creates the tension in the game is so fantastic. The first time I played this, as I said, I've already said in this episode, I'm a bit of a girl when it comes to scary games, and I did not want to be scared. So what I did was I decided to watch some videos of Slender before I played it, just so I knew what to expect. I didn't want that surprise. I was still going to play it, but I didn't want the shock factor as much. So I played it, and I watched them play on the video, and it was fine. I knew what was coming, and I looked around. I was like, "This is the environment. Okay, that's what's going to happen. This is the sound. Okay." And I felt okay. I felt pretty good about it. So I started playing, and it was okay. I just got my torch, walking around the woods. It was creepy. It was because of the quiet and the crunching under your feet, and it was a bit eerie. But I was like, I'm okay. This is fine. And then I got into the center. I think it was the center of the map. I don't know how big the map was. But where the bathroom, the shower areas are, like that big kind of brick structure and like the big oil drums. I was like, okay, this is a bit creepier. And I went to walk into the shower, the bathroom area, and I thought, no, there's nothing good in there. There's nothing, never going to be anything good in there. So I thought I'll back away. And I had some look around the drums, and I was getting quite kind of tense. I was feeling quite tense, looking around the drums, waiting to see him just in the distance, just like the corner of him around something. I didn't see him, so I carried on walking, and I walked around the side of the building, and suddenly I heard boom, boom, boom. And then I was like, pause, sorry, headphones off, walk away from the computer. This has got me completely. Forget watching the video, it didn't matter at all. It has got me. And I had to take a break and come back to it because and that was all in the sound. That was all in the sound. It was just the oppressive. We've said it a number of times. Oppressive. Just that's the word I have to use because I just felt the world was so close in on me that I couldn't breathe. Yeah. It was, and I like the fact that there were very, very few cheap scares. I mean, the static that kind of flashes up, that's a cheap scare. That's your equivalent of the screaming woman kind of thing. But I really like that they didn't rely on that because they didn't need that. You didn't have to have that. Another thing that I think is quite important, and it kind of links into what you were just saying, Chris, about not knowing anything about Slenderman, is that there's no instructions with this game. Nothing tells you to collect any pages. Nothing tells you something's after you. Nothing. You're just walking in the woods. And I think that the level of the thing about not knowing what's out there, not knowing what's coming, not knowing really what you have to do, you're just kind of walking, and suddenly you have this feeling that I'm being followed, I'm being watched. There's something really creepy here. I need to get away from here, but I don't know where I'm going. I'm in the dark. I think that's really important. That the fact that that gives you no instructions.
Yeah, I mean, feeling abandoned, feeling lost, feeling helpless. They're all things that we have fears of. Like it's very almost scientifically constructed kind of play on your fears. Even the end of even right at the end of the game, there is something, you discover something that you did not know about Slenderman, that that soon becomes apparent, essentially. So it's like a new thing to be a bit scared about, and I think that's incredible. I didn't enjoy my time with the game, I must admit.
One thing I want to kind of throw into the mix, one of the reasons why I like this game as opposed to the canon of games that have an emphasis on gore, that are like shock scares, which don't stay with me as much as these kind of games. I want to bring into one of my favourite writers of ghost fiction, which is M.R. James, who kind of revolutionised the ghost story at the turn of the 20th century. And he wrote an essay on reflections of ghost stories. And he says a good ghost story should have 5 key ingredients in it. And the first one is the pretense of truth. So this idea that we can suspend our disbelief freely, which all three of us clearly have been able to do. Mm-hmm. Second, it's got to have an everyday setting. So I've seen woods like this in Slender. 3, an absence of bloodshed or sex. No gore in this game whatsoever. No nudity. Number 4, no explanation of the machinery. We don't know why or who the Slender Man is at all. In fact, that makes us even more anxious because we don't know about this person.
We don't know what's going to happen if he gets us.
No. He might just shake us by the hand.
Yeah.
And the last one on M.R. James's list is that all good ghost stories should have is a pleasing terror, which is such a delicious term in the sense that we should be terrified, but the terror should always be pleasing. We should always want to come back and replay the game. So was this terror that you felt in Slender? Well, maybe terror's overstretching it a bit, but was this
I think it's terror kind of fits quite nicely.
But was this terror a pleasing one, do you reckon?
I didn't enjoy myself. There you go.
Did you appreciate it for that fact?
Yeah, I appreciated it. But that's simply because I'm like Dan and I'm a great big wuss. But I think that for somebody who is, I think that I think it would definitely be enjoyable because it does evoke all of those it builds up. It builds up this suspense. It's like the best sort of Japanese horror movies, right? Isn't it? Like, it's all build up until there's one moment essentially that is the culmination, the release, effectively, and it's either death or success. So I think if you enjoy being scared, then you're mental, but also it would work.
I think I think I'd probably agree. I appreciate it incredibly for what the feelings and the emotions it's been able to invoke in me. Did I enjoy it? Not a tiny little bit, because I don't like that feeling. But an interesting point that kind of you raised in discussing that essay is one of the points he says there is an absence of gore, which is something that I want to bring us on to our other game, Eyes, because there are elements of gore in Eyes, and for me that was one thing that really kind of drew it back. When you compare it to Slender, with Slender you have this kind of otherworldly force that's kind of following you, the Slender Man who's in a suit and white face, literally no defining features really. And yet with Eyes, okay, this could be a spoiler to say this, but there is the manifestation of your enemy is a gruesome woman's head with a huge mouth, which is kind of bloody and monstrous. And I think the reason, if I'm right, the reason why it's a head is because the monster that's following you was hung, and it's a woman who was hung, and that's why it's a head that's following you. But for me, because they show you this and they put the gore out there, the second I saw that, I stopped being scared of it. There was something weird and creepy about Slenderman. Even after I saw him, he still creeped me out, because he's so... There's nothing scary about him. To say a black suit and a white face, there's nothing scary there. Whereas to say a gruesome, bloodied face, kind of head all up by itself, that sounds scary. But once you've seen it, I'm not scared anymore. And I think that's one thing that Eyes did, because... One of the reasons we chose Eyes was because it's a very similar game to Slender. Again, you are left with just a flashlight. In this game, you're walking through kind of, I think it's like a mansion, by the sounds of it. You're walking through and you are being followed by someone. You have to collect, in this game, it was bags of money. But for me, the decisions they made with Eyes, the horror game, really kind of stopped me being scared. I was scared until I saw her. I think when I first started playing it, there was a moment where I was just walking around and suddenly the character started breathing really heavily, and it kind of got me, and I thought, okay, I'm scared, and I ran somewhere, and suddenly I didn't know where I was, because I'd ran so kind of not even thinking, and I was suddenly in a room that I didn't recognise. I didn't know where I was, I didn't know where I was going, and that did scare me. But then that feeling dissipated as soon as I knew what was following me, because it didn't bother me. Well, after a while, it became quite humorous. And I have to say, if you watch Pete's video of him playing Eyes, there's quite a humour. It does become quite humorous. A glitch happens in the game, which I think pulls any semblance of fear out of the antagonist in this game. I mean, this is just me. Did any of you guys get any kind of fear from the game, or were you kind of struggling with how it was put together?
I found it easier to avoid confronting the fear in this game, because one of the things that sets Eyes apart from other games is this, well, the nature it's in its title really, that as you walk around this mansion, there are a series of eyes that have been painted onto the walls, and if you click these eyes, what you see is actually well, it's kind of a point of view shot from the thing that is pursuing you, and you can actually see where it is in the mansion. So that's the only way you've got a sense of where this thing is in the mansion, and it's looking for you. And as soon as I discovered that fact, I realised I would never click a single eye at all in the game. I didn't care. I didn't want to know where it was, because it's that sense that there's a double-edged sword, isn't there, really? When there's this sense that if we play more horror games, if we watch more scary films, that should really make us less scared of them. But I would argue that actually it's the opposite, because we're so aware of the conventions of how it works. We're actually directing the horror film and the horror game as we're playing it. And so invariably it's just as bad knowing about it. So I felt that by having that extra perspective of seeing where this threat was, it was kind of me directing the horror film shot, each shot I suppose, and kind of trying to scare myself, which I didn't want to do. So I completely avoided that aspect of it. So in respects, I didn't actually play Eyes as it's supposed to be played.
But the thing is though that like I got more frustrated with the eye system, like the eye mechanic, than anything else. What use was it? Like the resolution of the game's textures was so low, and the construction of the area that you were in was so forgettable that I really didn't know where I was in the place. Whenever I grabbed one of the eye symbols and tapped whatever key it is to see through the eyes of it, I thought, what use is this, mate? What use is this in any capacity? Because if I can see myself, which by the way you can't do, like then I'm screwed. I get a warning anyway. I get an audio and a visual warning which says run.
That's a bit silly, I think.
Whenever it's close, but also like even if it's in a completely different part of this mansion or wherever it is that I'm meant to be in, I don't know where it is. Like if I'm playing the game for like the first couple of times, I don't know where that head's floating about. So how on earth can I use that? How can I use the information that the game gives me to complete it successfully? I can't.
It's just to make you scared. That's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. It's just there to try and make you scared. And as you say, as soon as you see it, you think, oh, all right. Like you may as well just turn all the lights on. Like the only scary element of it is that when it gets close, things start to rattle. So plates start to. That was really cool. That was really affecting.
That poltergeist thing. Yeah.
When I was thinking about it, like after kind of planning for this show and what I wanted to say, I started thinking about this enemy, and I just kept on thinking of it in the same way that you think of a villain in Scooby-Doo. It was that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That was how I saw it. I mean, when I first picked this game, I really liked the idea of entering the eyes of the enemy, and so to give you the idea of being stalked and being hunted, that was a really nice idea. But in actual fact, as you say, Pete, when you first play it, I've got no idea where this thing is.
Yeah.
I don't know how big this mansion is. They could be anywhere. They could be in the room next door to me, and I don't know. There's no sense of location that allows you to be scared. If I knew the building, if I knew where it was, I would be scared. But a thing on top of not knowing that, but also when you enter the eyes of the monster, it kind of goes into like a sonar type image where everything's kind of wireframes
everything.
And all flashy lights, and so you can't really get a grasp of anything where you are. If it was perhaps just a slow movement through the level that you've already seen, so you know the house anyway, if you could see that would be much more affecting. Because if I looked through their eyes and I saw, hang on a minute, I was just in that room.
Yeah.
Then I'd be thinking, okay, they're right behind me. I need to get out of here. Then I'd be scared. But I had no sense of that.
So this gameplay idea of seeing through the eyes of your enemy is nothing new. There was a very, very good game by the people who made the Silent Hill games called Siren. Your character can sight jack, which basically means that you can see through the eyes of the people who are coming to get you, effectively. And it works in that game because the environment's very small in the first PS2 games. They're very compact sequences, so you can look into the fog and you'll see a building in the distance, and you can sight jack an enemy and you'll see that same enemy is looking at the same building, so you know roughly where they are. That's really useful. That's really effective. It's kind of cool as well because you can hear the sort of agony that these creatures are in. But here, it's just underutilized. It just feels like somebody's playing Quake with no clipping on. You know, it feels like they're floating around with like God mode enabled.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting actually is less to an extent with Slender, because Slender, what I love about Slender is that if you take away like the fact that it's lit by torchlight, maybe you won't agree with me, Dan, on this, but actually it's just a very simple game of an AI character following you around a space.
Oh no, that's completely it. Yeah, and that's why it's so impressive that they are able to get the emotions out of me.
But turning that on its side, I suppose, and looking at eyes, let's be honest, without the eyes mechanic, is Pac-Man. You're moving around a particular environment looking for a reward, and you've got to avoid something in this maze that is looking for you.
But in addition to that, I would say that it is so close to that formula because So a game like let's go back to Clock Tower, which is maybe it's a bit obscure, but in that game there's basically no weapons, so you can't fight back against your enemies, which is exactly the same with Eyes. The difference is that you can hide, and like I constantly felt like when the creature was coming for me, I thought, okay, how is the game giving me the ability to counter this creature's ability? Because as soon as you get to that creature, it's an instant basically one hit kill, right?
Yeah.
So what is the game giving me? How is the game letting me interact with its environment that gives me some kind of, not edge necessarily, but something to react to how it's working? Because it is like Pac-Man with one sort of change, and that's in Pac-Man you have this great spatial awareness in that you can see all of the map in the original arcade game, but you can only see what's inside the same room. You can sort of figure out where the creature is by either looking through its eyes if you've played the game loads and loads and loads, at which point you're not really scared about the creature anymore, or you can sort of see it visually and you can kind of hear it sort of approaching, but that's all you get in terms of spatial awareness. And so if a game isn't going to give me spatial awareness because that's something that it has for fear, to invoke fear, then that's fine, but give me something to avoid an enemy, because at some point I'm running through the corridors and it's pretty much down to luck whether or not I'm going to get caught.
Yeah, I think with Slender, I think what they did there to kind of on that point of view is that the Slender Man, when you see him, he won't move.
Yeah.
So when you see him, what you can do, you can watch him, provided you're not too close, and you can then back away and he won't move, and you can get a good distance, and then you can run.
Yeah.
And that allows you there's a dynamic there that allows you to get away. So if you see him, it's not over. Basically, in Eyes, if you see the woman, you're done.
You're dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like that's it. That is absolutely it. I'm a firm believer in the idea that as soon as you die in a horror game, your investment is immediately removed, right? And it is so easy to die in Eyes that you don't. In the end, I found myself just running around haphazardly, because what's the point in trying to be stealthy and sneaky when this disembodied head can float about and go absolutely anywhere at a pretty good fair rate of knots? Like, there isn't, and it's pretty much luck to whether or not you get killed. So in the end, you just keep running around and like trying to find these randomly placed objects that you need to collect. Whereas with Slender, you can always get away. You can always, as long as you're smart, you can always get away. And that's it. Slender can hold you in its grasp for 15 minutes and you'll die potentially at the end of that 15 minutes. And it will be terrifying because it has built up all of this, all of the tension. If you die in Slender and you restart the game, for the first 60 seconds, you're pretty brazen about it. Maybe the first couple of minutes you're pretty like, yeah, whatever, like running to the next thing. But after you've put in a certain amount of time with your character that you're playing as, you feel like you've got this investment, and with that investment comes some sort of emotional investment, and with that then you get sucked into this fear, and it works again. You can keep playing that game time and time again, and you will be scared by it because you have something to lose, and you feel like you can fight back. But with Eyes, that's simply not there.
And with my psychogeographical hat on,
go on.
The level design for Slender is just so much appealing. Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's just it's a level you want to explore, and sometimes that bypasses the fear you feel for the Slender Man because you're just drawn to the variety of different digital architectures that you encounter.
There were a number of times when I was playing it, and I tried to be more strategic about it, thinking, okay, I'm going to try and go into certain areas and clear areas and move on, so I can like square by square go through the level. And I'd get to a certain area and I'd be looking around it, and then I'd go back into the woods and I'd be looking around and something would be chasing me, and then suddenly I'd come back into the open and I'd be back where I started, and there'd be a sense of I'm going in circles, I'm lost here, I don't know where I'm going, something's after me. And because you've got these little pockets of open space throughout it, surrounded by all these trees, it's so easy to get lost and to lose your way and to not be. You don't have a path to follow. There are paths within it, but in your mind, you can't say there's no A to B to C to D. You're constantly falling between the lines of those, and you're struggling to get back on course. All the while, something's following you and something's hunting you. And I think for me, for me always fear is what your mind creates rather than what your mind sees. When you're watching a scary film, when you're watching Friday the 13th, you're not scared when Jason Voorhees kills a girl. You're not scared when he sticks a knife in her. You're scared when she's just walking down the street by herself. Mm-hmm. You're scared because you know it's going to come. You know he's going to get her at some point, and the fear comes from you waiting for him to jump out. As soon as he's out there and he sticks a knife in her, you're not scared anymore.
Because your mind is constantly thinking, where is the Slender Man? In the peripheral of your vision, outside of the cone of light that your torch creates, there's shadows and there's mist moving, and constantly I would quote unquote see the Slender Man in the corner of my vision, and then it was actually just the fog. It was just the fog moving in a certain way, and I felt, that was my mind playing tricks on me, and that's the cool thing, because it's your mind going, you're going to get scared in a minute, you're going to get scared in a minute, and you amp yourself up.
You see him before you see him.
Exactly.
So in terms then, because we've discussed like these two games in particular, but in terms of for us what makes a good horror game, just in case, listener, you're interested in making your own horror game, what do we think, what is our own list? Because MR James has given us a list for what makes a good ghost story.
Go on then, Dan. You go with number one.
I'm going to go with simplicity. You make it too complicated, and there's too many things for you to think about, and you're not allowing the fear to take hold. I think if you give me too many things to worry about, if you give me all these weapons and a backpack with loads of stuff in that I have to filter through and take out rations and eat them and have a health pack, I'm losing myself then. I'm not paying attention. But give me a flashlight, and that's it, and I'm focused, and I'm ready, and I'm absorbed.
There's got to be an element of the uncanny. So,
do you want to explain the uncanny to people?
Yeah, so the uncanny is, it's difficult to explain. It's when so a good example is you see somebody who looks like a friend of yours in the street, and you go up to them to go and say hello, and just as they turn around you realise it's not them, but it looks so much like them. Like, that is an uncanny instance. It's something that is very familiar to a thing, very close to a thing that you are familiar with, but it is not that, and it is different, and usually it has a sort of, or it sometimes has a sinister kind of connotation to it. I'm right on that, aren't I, Dr. Darby?
Oh, I actually gave a lecture on it today.
Yeah.
Was I right? Would I get
the uncanny? Yeah, you're top notch. Yeah, the uncanny also is something that was written about by Freud. He didn't come up with the concept; he wrote about it. It's got to be something that it looks like 99% like it should be, but there's that 1% that niggles with you. So like dolls are a very good example, and that's why you get a lot of them in horror films. It's not necessarily
like they've got to look amazing. It's simply that it has to be so close to home that you can draw something from it, that you can become invested in it in some way, but it has to be different enough for you to go, that's not right.
Good, that's cool. I like that.
Go on then, Chris.
For mine would be pacing and earning your scares.
Really? Okay.
I think that I never underestimate the ability to pace your game out. The average playing time for me on Eyes was about a minute and a half before the thing would get me, whereas Slender, you can really draw out that tension, really draw it out, let it build, let the sound build, and that the sound is tied up with this, let it build until you're almost at breaking point. And then, only then can you earn that fear, earn that scare.
Well, dear listener, you've made it to the end of our Freeplay Halloween special. The ghosts, the goblins, and all other scary things have gone away for another year. The Slender Man will follow us no more, and the lady with the eyes, well, she'll float off somewhere else. If you want to play along and see what we've been playing this month, as we said before, Pete has kindly donated his time and created 2 lovely videos which you can find on our YouTube page. On our YouTube page you can also find all of our other podcasts as and when they come out. You can find that on youtube.com/InRetroSpect podcast. If you do want to get in touch with us as well, you can also contact us on Twitter at InRetroSpect. You can like us on Facebook, and you can leave us a message at our website www.inretrospectpodcast.com. If you've enjoyed the scary aspects of this, you might also want to give a little look to a show we did a little while ago. Chris, do you want to give him a little tease about what it was you did a while ago?
Well, I did a show called Fearscapes, where I basically got my colleagues here in retrospect to play games that deliberately would scare them and would allow them to face their fears. So each of them has very unique and distinct fears, some more than others. And I got them to play a game that related to that fear, and I got them to document that process. And we just all had a great chat about the nature of fear in gaming and its effect on us, I suppose. So it's a good listen. So check it out on Digital Wanderlust on the InRetrospectPodcast.com website.
Okay, so I think that draws a close to today's episode. Next month on Freeplay is possibly the highlight of my entire year, as it is once again the Freeplay Christmas special. We'll be welcoming Sam back into the fold because he would never miss an opportunity like this. In the Christmas show, just for those of you who may not have heard it before, listen back to our old episodes, they are classics. We do a little spin on the usual free play format. We play some free games, both of them inspired by the wonderful festive period. We also have a Secret Santa where we exchange gifts between each other, all of them only £5, so we don't spend too much money there either. We also have a Christmas quiz, which is, I think, my favourite point of the entire year, bar none. It's a great show, so make sure you tune in same time next month. But for now, from me, from Pete, from Chris, from Sam wherever he is, and from the Slender Man himself, it's goodbye and a happy Halloween. Goodbye.
Bye. Bye.
Ha 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 ha.